The Monroe County Historical Museum presents Monroe County Memories.
Hello, welcome to Monroe County Memories. My name is Katie Brown and I'm the Curator of Education at the Monroe County Historical Museum in Bloomington. During the next half hour, we'd like to introduce you to some of the exhibits and programs available here at the museum, many of which are free. We'll interview one of our donors to the collection, spotlight our summer day camp program, and speak with one of our most valuable volunteers. But first, let's take a special insider's tour of the 175th Anniversary Traveling Exhibit researched by Pam Service, our Curator of Exhibits.
Throughout 1993 and into 1994, Monroe County is celebrating its 175th birthday. As part of that special occasion, the Historical Museum is helping the county's people meet its history. A traveling exhibit shows some of the highlights of the past 175 years. The exhibit has been set up in community centers, banks, schools, and at the county fair. Here are a few images from today and some of those images from the past. Monroe County's earliest inhabitants were Native Americans who came here as early as 10,000 BC. The War of 1812 brought the first European settlers to the area, and by 1818 enough people were here to divide off part of Orange County to make Monroe County. Our first courthouse was a simple two-room log building. Of course, this was before the photographic era, so the early pictures of Bloomington are sketches or paintings. This picture of the courthouse square shows a stump speaker standing on a real stump. Just 2 years after the county was founded, in 1820, Bloomington was selected as the site for the state seminary, which later became Indiana University. The school was built at what is today Seminary Square Park at 2nd and College Streets. In 1825, the first 10 students started to study at the institution. Later on, one of the original buildings caught fire, and the trustees moved the campus from that location to far east of town, to Dunn's Farm, which of course is the current campus and has now become surrounded by the city of Bloomington. In the 1840s, iron was mined near Indian Creek. We have a picture of an early iron ore production facility. But the county didn't have a lot of iron, and that industry didn't last too long. This picture shows the courthouse that succeeded the log structure. This courthouse was built in 1826 and was the first one to have the fish on top of it, which is still on top of our current courthouse. The fish was made by Austin Seward, who was a blacksmith who came very early to Bloomington. The fish weather vane that he made has been transferred from courthouse to courthouse through the years. The early settlers had to be self-sufficient, growing their own food and making their own clothes. But this was really a very poor area for agriculture because it was so hilly and the soil was so shallow. Nonetheless, that's all there was for people to do, and most of the folks in Monroe County were farmers. They just weren't wealthy farmers. Pigs were the main livestock. They were allowed to roam free in the woods and then were rounded up, sort of like a cattle roundup, and herded to transportation. In fact, we're told that High Street was one of the major routes for these pig drives. Flatboats were really the only means of transportation out of the area other than the very poor roads. Harrodsburg was a big flatboat center, shipping pork as far as New Orleans. The Civil War brought disagreement to Monroe County's residents. Most settlers here were Southern, but Indiana was part of the Union. Feelings were divided over secession and slavery. Some county residents, like the residents of this home, helped the Underground Railroad. The war also brought the county a claim to fame. Big Dave Van Buskirk, the tallest, the biggest man in the Union Army, was from Monroe County. Early on in the county's history, limestone was used for field walls and gravestones, but it was basically a nuisance, making the fields hard to farm. The coming of the railroads in the 1850s changed all that and made it economical to market stone outside the county. A building boom in the big eastern cities fed the rapid growth of quarries and mills. A growing county needed a larger courthouse. The 1826 building was added onto and embellished in 1858 and the 1880s. But in the early 20th century, the current courthouse was built, and it was a celebration of the limestone industry. It used all sorts of elaborate limestone and architectural details and statues. It was a prime opportunity for the local limestone carvers to show their art. It was in the 1890s that Bloomington began to turn from a small frontier village to a real city. This interesting picture, taken from the Wiley House into downtown Bloomington, shows the Methodist Church and Central High School. It shows you that this was the heart of downtown, but still, between there and the Wiley House, it was surrounded by farms. Bloomington had officially incorporated in the 1870s. By the 1890s, they were working on a professional fire department. Early in the 20th century, they got a professional police department. This wonderful picture shows some of the men who look to us like the Keystone Cops. The business community also started to really take off around this time. This picture of workingmen's federal savings is particularly appropriate because that is the longest ongoing business that was started in Bloomington and is still around. This picture of the courthouse square around 1920 shows a transition period for Bloomington. The streets had been paved. This picture shows bricks around the courthouse square, but one side of the street was for automobile parking and the other side was for horse and buggy parking. Water problems plagued the growing city, and the university several times threatened to move unless the water problem was solved. University Reservoir, a small lake that today sits behind the IU golf course, showed that stone on the east side of town could hold water. It was followed by reservoirs at Griffey Lake, Lake Lemon, and finally Lake Monroe, solving the water problem for good. The university stayed, of course, and began to grow like the rest of town during the 1890s. This is a wonderful picture of the 1892 football team with their striped socks and handlebar mustaches. A university naturally spawns related activities. During the 1920s, the jazz era, and the time of composer Hoagy Carmichael, we have a picture of the mock graduation that was held for a number of years at the Book Nook, an Indiana Avenue soda fountain and institution. That is, incidentally, where Hoagy Carmichael supposedly wrote Stardust. He and a bunch of other young men were involved in the mock graduation program, which basically spoofed the university and everything having to do with it. Another feature that was special about Bloomington in the early part of the 20th century was the furniture industry. It got started in the late 19th century when the Showers brothers and their father opened a furniture factory. At its Morton Street location, it eventually became the largest furniture factory in the country. At its height, it employed about 2,500 Bloomingtonians and made furniture that was shipped all over the country through mail order catalogs such as Sears and Montgomery Ward. Monroe County, of course, also sent people off to fight in both World Wars. In the Second World War, Indiana University was the center of much ROTC activity. This picture shows both young men and young women in uniform marching on campus. This picture at the Princess Theater shows several women selling war bonds. Buying bonds and helping in scrap metal drives were ways many people back home participated in the war effort. Before the Second World War, the furniture business had started to decline, but other things stepped in to fill the gap. RCA was the first of the electronic industries to move into Bloomington and take the place economically of the more basic industries like the furniture factory. The RCA photo is what captured the attention of Michael Butcher's family when they visited this traveling exhibit at the Monroe County Fair. They're not sure, but they think Michael's mother may be one of the women in the photo. The exhibit was put together and has been able to travel throughout the county thanks to the support of the Bloomington Community Foundation, Working Men's Federal Savings and Loan, the IU Archives, the Lilly Library, the Commission for Bloomington's Downtown, and the City of Bloomington. You can call the Monroe County Historical Museum at 332-2517 to find out where the traveling exhibit is on display.
Many families currently living in Bloomington and Monroe County have pioneer ancestors who were instrumental in forming early communities here. One of these families is the Seward family, local blacksmiths who settled in the 1820s. We have with us today Dora Seward, who has generously donated many items to our museum's collection. Clover Williams is here with us today to ask Ms. Seward about one of her most recent donations.
Hello, I'm here with Dora Seward, and we're going to talk about donations to the Monroe County Historical Museum. Hi.
Hello.
Ms. Seward, could you tell us a little bit about your family's history in Monroe County?
Yes, we were one of the early pioneers. My great-great-grandfather came here in 1821, which is a long time ago, and started a business that at that time adapted to the needs of the community. They needed guns and they needed blacksmith work, not only for horses, but particularly for tools. And so the company continued, father, son, down until about 1983, I believe, adapting always to the community, so that at the end they were into industrial supplies and had closed the foundries by that time. But there's always been some handiwork of the Seward Company in the history of Bloomington and in the community life. Mm-hmm.
I hear that there's an important artifact of the history of Bloomington that was made by a member of your family.
There are several things here in the museum. In fact, there's a little Seward corner. And I thank God for this museum because our family has so many things. I was brought up with a museum, so-called, in our basement that Father had things set aside through the Civil War and on of things that were in his museum, things that really didn't belong to any certain person, but were passed on from family to family. And we still have those things. And now I want them, and my sister does too, to come to this Monroe County Historical Museum. And then as I say, I'm so glad to have a place to give things and to present things that I think maybe shouldn't be thrown away.
Right.
Things of no great value, but just perhaps of social history interest. Because I think it's nice to know they're going to be preserved, and not only that, but that more people are going to see them. Very few people ever saw our Seward Museum, but now it's possible that certain items that might be of interest can be seen by hundreds of people.
That's great. Do you have a favorite donation or a donation that you think is more interesting to you?
Well, I think anything that I bring down, I'm just so pleased, as I say, to give it. And the museum gives me leadership in what they might accept. For example, if they have they had a show on milk glass, and I thought, I have a great deal of milk glass, and so I came in with a box full of late entries, and I did the same thing with the beaded purses. I brought down 6 old beaded purses. And then the nice thing is when I start to take them back home, I relent. And then I check with Pam's service and I say, would you like to have some of these? And they are so gracious here about the museum. They're not patronizing. They are hospitable to what you do give. Could I show you this,
Sure, I'd love
Clover?
to.
I brought today an item that perhaps exemplifies that. This is an ordinary fan, a handmade fan, but it's perhaps 70 or 80 years old, and it says Day's Funeral Home and an address on North Walnut. Well, although that funeral home is still in existence, I presume they no longer give fans because of air conditioning. We don't need the fans. And then the address was an address where my great-grandfather lived on North Walnut, and then Day's Funeral Home took it over. And now it's a parking lot. So this is a remnant of my great-grandfather's house and of a funeral home and of a different era when there were fans that people needed. And they gave these out broadside, particularly to people in the churches, so that there were other funeral homes, I presume, who had these. And I know the minister in our home, in our church, when I was a child, asked that we not fan when he was giving his sermon. He found that distracting. The Methodists could fan, but we could not. But they were handy. You could get a child to behave, with a fan. But it's a bit of social history, but of no intrinsic worth except the story it tells.
Oh, but that's very important.
So I'm so glad to do that.
Thank you very much.
I would say, maybe in conclusion, that the staff here is so kind and is so knowledgeable about what they are doing. And there have been things I've brought down and they say, no, I don't think that quite fits in. But I trust them so much, and I'm so glad to know that things are going to, as I say, be preserved and be seen not only by more people, but by people maybe not even born yet, who will be interested in the community life, particularly of Bloomington and of Monroe County.
Great, great.
Let's take a look now at some of the activities in which you and your family can participate at the Monroe County Historical Museum. One of our most popular programs is the Summer Day Camp program, available for kids ages 4 through 12 during the months of July and August.
Sure, the museum can be a place for just looking or for listening to the experts.
The way this works, there are 460 threads across here, I think it is, and each thread goes through a little loop.
But the fun for kids comes in doing things that help them learn more about history. Hands-on activities are the focus of many of the educational offerings of the Monroe County Historical Museum, and that's especially true of one of the more popular programs, Summer Day Camp for Kids. Here's how a few recent campers described their activities.
Well, we go on a field trip every day, and we went to the Wiley house. Well, it's a whole lot of fun. You get to play. Sometimes you go on field trips. I stay half day. I eat lunch. And it's a lot of fun. They have nice teachers.
Sometimes what happens in the museum can inspire the campers to share a bit of their family histories. That's what happened with Chase Guthrie.
Well, we were making family trees yesterday, so I thought I asked Katie if I could bring it in to show it to the class so they'd get an idea of a real one.
Other activities teach the campers to work cooperatively, as they did during a round of butter churning, where the kids got to do the work and reap the rewards. The group also learned a chant from the past.
Okay,
Okay, I want to teach you guys this rhyme that Pioneer Girls used to sing when they were churning butter. Listen. They would sing, come, listen, you guys are going to see it next time. Come, butter, come, butter, come. Nellie's waiting by the gate, waiting for her butter cake. Come, butter, come, butter, come.
But the campers quickly updated that to fit each and every day camper.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it for each
No
person.
Nellie's here.
There are no Nellies here. We should have a Katie. We can say Katie. We have 3 Katies.
Yeah.
Okay, come butter come butter come. Nellie's waiting by the gate, waiting for her butter cake. Come butter come butter come. Okay, thank you. Okay, Kyle's turn. Come butter come butter come. Kyle's waiting by the gate, waiting for his butter cake. Come butter come butter come.
Of course, one advantage of Museum Day Camp is the chance to learn from experts like Museum's collections curator and master weaver, Chris Bobbitt.
The blankets in the cabin are called coverlets. It's a special kind of blanket, and that's the style of blanket that I do, or weave.
That leads up to the chance to practice the new knowledge through a crafts project. And crafts ranked high on the list of answers campers gave to the question, what do you like best about Museum Day Camp?
All the crafts. I think the weaving and making the paper dolls and turning the butter. Making candles.
Day Camp is just one of the many educational programs the museum offers year-round for both children and adults. Check the BCAT community calendar on Channel 12 or the newspaper to find out what educational programs are coming up soon.
Of course, the daily operation of the museum simply could not be possible without our valuable corps of volunteers. More than 100 members of our community donate their time and energy and talents as board members, docents, gift shop managers, and special events coordinators. We have with us today Alice Binkley, one of our most valuable volunteers, who is here to talk about her work with the museum. Here's Clover Williams.
Hi, this is In the Volunteer Spotlight, and today we have Alice Binkley here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today. I've been a volunteer for the museum for, about 11 years, ever since the museum opened. It's a wonderful thing to be helping in the museum that's so important to our community.
That's great. It's going to be wonderful to hear about it. Alice, could you tell us a little bit about what you do here?
Oh, as a volunteer, I'm ready to do anything that's needed. There are many different kinds of things that we can do. One is being a receptionist at the front desk, helping people answer questions and being friendly and inviting everyone in to see the exhibits. Another is helping in the gift shop. And we have a wonderful, it's a small gift shop, but it's a wonderful assortment of books and cards, a unique group of gifts that people really enjoy. Sometimes if there are mailings that need to go out, we help stuffing envelopes. Some volunteers even type. Mm-hmm. So there are a variety of things. Probably the kind of activity that I enjoy most is being a docent.
What's that?
A docent is a person who is a guide to take people, groups of people, or small groups or larger groups of people through the museum, pointing out things of spatial interest.
Is there a group that you most enjoy?
Oh, I enjoy all of it, but I think probably because I'm a retired school teacher, the groups that I really enjoy most are the children. And I think it's so important for the children. I taught Indiana history for many years, and the museum is an adjunct to the classroom. It's a wonderful place. It shows the children how people lived a long time ago. They can read about it, but it's just, they have to experience the the log cabin we have and the different things that we can show them. It's a wonderful experience for them.
Oh, that sounds great. What are some of the most interesting experiences you've had?
Well, one day we had a lady and her mother came in who had visited, and I think even stayed in the log cabin that we have. The log cabin had been in their family for many years.
This one here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting. They were excited to see how we were using it, and they were so pleased. Another thing that I think with the children, they always love trying on the yoke, the little wooden yoke that has the two wooden water buckets, one on each side, that the children used to use when they went for water at the spring. Yeah. And they just can't believe that children a long time ago didn't turn on a faucet. Well, they know they didn't turn on a faucet, but to think they'd have to go to the spring to get water, and after all, those water buckets are heavy, empty, and how they would feel if they were full of water.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow, yeah, I was surprised too. Could you say a little bit about why you volunteer?
Well, I volunteer because I think it's so important for the community, and it's important for all members of the community, the older members, and particularly the children, because the museum is the one organization in the community that gathers together all the artifacts of the past, preserves them, and puts them on exhibit so people can see them and interpret them. And we hope will help people build an awareness, a knowledge of their past, and an appreciation for their heritage.
Wow. Wow, that's great. Well, thanks a lot. Thank you very much for coming and being interviewed.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you for joining us here on Monroe County Memories. The museum is located in the old library building on the corner of East 6th Street and Washington. The museum is open Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 5, Saturday from 10 to 4, and Sunday from 1 to 4. We're closed on Mondays. We hope that you'll take the time to visit our museum and check out the permanent and traveling exhibits. If you're interested in volunteering or donating items to our museum's collection, please contact the museum office. And once again, thanks for joining us on Monroe County Memories.